Thanks, Louise, and thank you everybody for coming and staying and listening to this at the end of what has been quite an impactful and interesting day. For those of you who don't know what MRAG is, we are an environmental aquatic consultancy company, and we are very much evidence-based and science-led government, working for governments, NGOs, and various different private bodies across the world. So we have learnings that we can bring from what we have done research-wise and bringing that into the UK context. And so this presentation very much focuses around two projects that we did, one for Natural England and one for the Marine Management Organisation, very much focused on bringing in what has the world done in terms of fisheries management, what can we learn from that, and what can we bring into the UK for the development of fisheries management plans. So we've already spoken about fisheries management plans, but it's on my outline, so I will go through it very quickly at high speed. And then look at why are we looking beyond the UK? What can we bring in terms of scientific evidence as to what works and what doesn't? Evaluating the effectiveness of those management measures, their applicability or their translation into UK law, whether it's even possible. And then I'm going to go through a rapid 3 examples of aspects that we've looked at throughout the world and brought in, how this is currently being used within the UK, so bringing it back into that context, and some of the key takeaways that we've learned from this. In terms of fisheries management plans, we've heard it several times today, it is now the foundation and backbone of UK fisheries management within UK waters going forward. Post-Brexit. The main aim of this is for sustainable stocks, and that brings in that 2030 target, sorry, I'm losing my words. And here I'm just looking at 3 specific management plans that are in development. One is the skates and rays fisheries, that's in tranche 3, so it's slightly further along on the development process. Looking at the wrasse species complex, it's very much a live fishery, so it's quite a different aspect. And sea bream, which is including aspects of climate change and species distribution changes. So that's tranche 4. So just 3 different separate examples. Why do we look across from the UK? There is no point taking management measures that have been applied elsewhere across the globe that have not met their objectives and not met their targets. You want to go out there and find things that worked for somebody else that you can bring home, see if it's applicable, and apply it at home to get that sustainability where you want it to be going forward. So for that, you want to look at the species characteristics, looking at temperate zones elsewhere. Do the species act in the same way as they do here? What can we learn from that? What management measures have been applied? How do they function? And what opportunities have they learned elsewhere that we can bring home to us? In terms of evaluating the effectiveness of management measures, you want to compare that to the goals, looking at whether you have achieved its objectives. So you can look at stock assessments. Is the stock healthy? You can look at life history traits. Does the management meet the life history characteristics of the species you want to manage? Environmental considerations. Are there aspects that you want to consider about, for example, in a live wrasse fishery, where it is a welfare issue of fishing for them when water temperature goes above, for example, 16 degrees. It becomes an oxygen issue for them, and they are still a live animal. The other aspect is objectively verifiable indicators. To everybody else in that room, that just means, can you measure how much catch you've taken if you set a TAC? What can you compare one against the other in terms of an indicator to understand what's happening? The next aspect of this is all setting the groundwork for my examples, is applicability to the UK. Can you translate it? Is it something that meets the fishery objectives set out in the joint fisheries statement? Is it part of that sustainability? Is it part of that precautionary approach? Does it consider the ecosystem? Is it easy access or open access? Does it restrict access? Are there examples in the UK already? Can it be picked up and plonked into the UK in a different species or a different area to what is something that is there already? So you don't have to change legislation greatly, you can just pick it up and put it in. Is it something that's going to be accepted by fishery administrators? Is it an effective method? Is it something that you can enforce? Enforcement is quite a strong aspect here of you can set all of the management measures out there in the world that you like, but if the fishing industry is not going to adhere to them and you have no enforcement or you don't have their buy-in, it's not going to do anything. It'll just sit there as a piece of paper. So I have 3 examples that I wanted to bring to you. We've looked all over the globe, but I've got 3. Skates and rays management in North America, wrasse species complex from management in Norway, and sea bream management from Spain. First up, effectiveness of skates and ray management in North America. There are 3 circles here. One big green one is management measures that were deemed to be effective, including TACs, prohibited species, collections, move-on rules. Partially effective, but some bits of it fit, some bits of it don't quite fit. They're not quite hitting the mark, they're doing some bits well, but not other bits. And then the aspects that are non-effective. Here you'll see that there is TAC and prohibited on both the good and the bad. This is because North America covers both the US and Canada, and one's doing it well in one, and the other's not doing it so well in the other. Take that up and put that into translation into the UK. What does that look like? So across the top, there are some examples of what would be considered the fisheries objectives within the UK fisheries management plans, what you want to be able to do, and on the side, you've got what kind of measure you're looking at. Move-on rules. So they hit the sustainability, they hit the precautionary, they hit the ecosystem, because they are essentially a way of avoiding bycatch. Most move-on rules are associated with a maximum amount of bycatch. You move on, idea being that you no longer hit that bycatch, and you are preventing it from being caught and damaging the ecosystem. Other aspects, like in the identification guide, if you don't know what kind of skate you're looking at, then you're a little bit confused, and you put that down, and it's not going to help your management. Do you understand what it is that you're catching? Do you understand what you're recording? Next example, Norwegian wrasse. Again, the 3 different boxes, a little bit more mixed up here. Here they use, for example, maximum size, because you've got hermaphrodite species, which means that once you hit a certain size, the females become males or vice versa, and you have to have them in the population still, so having a minimum conservation size without a maximum is just not going to work. Translating that into the UK, effort limitations. They use effort limitations in terms of the number of licenses in Norway. That is a precautionary, so it puts an effort input limit on what you can do, but it does restrict equal access. You can only have so many licenses each year. Monitoring and reporting here, it contributes towards the scientific evidence, and it's something that we do here in the UK already quite well, monitoring. So that's something that doesn't hit any of the other boxes, but it does hit a vital scientific evidence. Last one is the Spanish sea bream. So the interesting point on this one is that they include recreational fishing. So they include anglers, and they have an effort control measure here. They have 1 fish per angler per day. Translate that into the UK, that would tick from a recreational fishing effort control, that ticks all of the boxes with the exception of the scientific evidence. Unless you have got the monitoring in there with it, it wouldn't hit the scientific evidence. A lot of the angling that we have in the UK doesn't get reported in the same way as the commercial fisheries, something that we could do better in the UK. So that is my whistle-stop tour of 3 bringing it from overseas into the UK. Very conscious of time here. So this is the next steps of what the UK is doing with that kind of information. We provided several reports of the information that we had learned, and we translated that into the UK. We handed a report over to them, taking that scientific evidence to help them develop their fisheries management plans. DEFRA had an online consultation for skates and rays for an actual draft of their fisheries management plan. Unfortunately for you, that closed last week. But you can go and put your inputs into the wrasse and the sea bream public consultations, which is online, and that closes on Friday. The intentions of that is that it brings it in, it takes everybody's knowledge, so much about the stakeholder engagement that we're hearing, about how important it is, takes the learnings from what everybody else thinks, and goes, okay, this is the science, this is what people think, this is where we should go with this. What did we learn? the importance of taking stock of experiences with others. There is no point implementing management that does not work in other places that are similar to ourselves and bringing that home and trying and thinking it's going to work here. If it's broke, don't do it. Last one is the learnings from experiences. I have heard all day how important stakeholder engagement is, and it's true, it really is important. Bring everybody along with you, find out their views, see what they have to say. The need for monitoring and reporting. You can have as much management as you want. If you're not seeing what it's doing, that's it. And that's it for me.